Every morning at precisely 6 a.m., in a quiet Portland park, an elderly man performs Tai Chi with movements so fluid they seem to dance with the wind itself. The neighbors smile, wave, and continue their jogs. Children giggle as he feeds pigeons afterward. Local shop owners greet him warmly. To everyone in this peaceful Oregon community, Marcus Chen is just another retired gentleman, living out his golden years in tranquility. But what if I told you that those gentle, flowing movements you see in that park have ended more lives than most action movies combined? What if those same hands that feed birds once strangled a warlord in Belgrade? What if that serene smile once belonged to one of the CIA's most feared operatives, a ghost who moved through the shadows of international espionage for 3 decades? This is not a story about a retired man doing morning exercises. This is the story of a weapon who learned to hide in plain sight, a killer who became invisible by becoming ordinary, a man who fooled an entire city for 15 years while carrying the weight of 43 confirmed eliminations on his conscience. Marcus Chen's Tai Chi routine isn't just exercise, it's muscle memory. It's the daily rehearsal of techniques that can break a neck in 3 seconds, collapse a windpipe with a palm strike disguised as a defensive block, or neutralize an armed opponent before they even realize they're in a fight. But the question that will haunt you through this entire story is this: can a man truly leave behind a life soaked in blood and secrecy? Can love built on lies ever survive the truth? And what happens when the ghosts of the past refuse to stay buried? Marcus Chen thought he had found peace. He was devastatingly wrong. And what's about to unfold will prove that some skills, once learned, can never truly be forgotten. The morning mist rolled through Laurelhurst Park like a living thing, soft and grey against the backdrop of Portland's awakening skyline. It was 6 a.m. on a Tuesday in late September, and the air carried that distinct Pacific Northwest chill that reminded everyone autumn was settling in for good. The Douglas firs stood like silent sentinels around the park's perimeter, their branches still heavy with moisture from the night's rain. Marcus Chen stood at his usual spot, near the northeast corner of the park, a flat area of grass that afforded him clear sightlines in all directions. Not that he thought about it in those terms anymore. At least, that's what he told himself. He was 67 years old, with silver hair cut short and practical, a lean frame that defied his age, and eyes that held a strange contradiction, warm and welcoming on the surface, but with depths that seemed to calculate and assess everything they touched. He moved through his Tai Chi form with practiced precision, cloud hands flowing into single whip. His weight shifted seamlessly, his breathing steady and controlled. To anyone watching, it was simply an old man maintaining his health through traditional Chinese exercise. But every movement Marcus made was a technique he had perfected over 33 years of classified service. The circular parry of brush knee could deflect a knife attack. The extended arm of White Crane spreads wings concealed a strike that could crush a trachea. Push hands wasn't just for balance, it was how you controlled an opponent's center of gravity before throwing them into a wall. Sarah Williamson jogged past with her golden retriever, Max. She waved enthusiastically, her ponytail bouncing. Marcus smiled and nodded, pausing his form just long enough to acknowledge her. Sarah was a pharmaceutical sales representative, 38, divorced, lived in the blue Victorian 3 blocks from Marcus's house. She jogged this route every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:15 a.m. He knew this not because he was surveilling her, but because patterns were simply how his mind worked. He noticed everything, catalogued everything, even when he didn't want to. "Beautiful morning, Mr. Chen," Sarah called out, not breaking stride. "Indeed it is," Marcus replied, his accent barely detectable, a slight roundness to his vowels that hinted at his Taiwanese birth, but was softened by decades in America. As Sarah and Max disappeared down the path, Marcus returned to his form. Snake creeps down, his body lowering smoothly, knees bent, one hand extended low. The movement looked meditative. It was actually the setup for a leg sweep that had once sent a Bulgarian arms dealer tumbling down a flight of stairs in Sofia. The man had broken his neck on the landing. An accident, the local police had ruled. Just another drunk tourist in the wrong place at the wrong time. Marcus pushed the memory away. That was another life, another version of himself that he had carefully, methodically buried beneath 15 years of normalcy. 15 years of being just Marcus, the friendly neighbor. Marcus, who volunteered at the community center on Wednesdays. Marcus, who brought homemade dumplings to block parties and knew everyone's children's names. He transitioned into Repulse Monkey, stepping backward, hands pushing forward then pulling back in a defensive motion. In reality, it was how you stripped a gun from an attacker's hand while simultaneously breaking their trigger finger. He had used that technique in Prague, in Manila, in Cairo, cities that felt like they belonged to someone else's biography now. The sun was beginning to break through the morning clouds, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus completed his form and moved to his second routine, the breathing exercises. He stood still, hands resting on his lower abdomen, eyes closed, focusing on the rise and fall of his breath. This was the part where his mind usually found something approaching peace. Not today. Marcus's eyes opened slightly, his gaze drifting to the parking lot at the park's edge. There was a dark blue sedan parked in the third spot from the entrance, a Honda Accord, maybe 7 or 8 years old, completely unremarkable. It had been there yesterday morning too, and the morning before that, different times, but always within the 6 to 7 a.m. window. The windows were tinted just dark enough to obscure the interior without drawing attention. It could be nothing. Portland was full of early risers who liked to sit in their cars and drink coffee while checking emails before work, but Marcus Chen didn't believe in coincidences. That belief had kept him alive through 3 decades in the field. He finished his breathing exercises and walked slowly toward the park's stone fountain, where he kept a small bag of bird seed. This was part of his routine too. The pigeons knew him, flocked to him the moment he reached into the bag. As he scattered the seeds, he angled his body to get a better view of the sedan. The license plate was Oregon, relatively new tags. Through the cant of the morning sun on the windshield, he could just make out a silhouette in the driver's seat. Male, medium build. No movement. Just watching. Marcus scattered more seeds, his expression serene, a gentle smile on his face as the pigeons cooed and pecked at the ground. Inside, his mind was running calculations. If this was surveillance, who and why? He had been clean for 15 years. His last mission had been in Berlin in 2008. He had retired quietly, relocated to Portland under his real name. No need for a new identity when his old one had always been buried deep in classified files anyway. The agency had been happy to let him fade away. Operatives like Marcus were relics of a different era, too much of a liability in the age of drones and cyber warfare. He finished feeding the birds and walked toward the park's exit on the opposite side, his stride unhurried. Let whoever it was wonder if he'd noticed. Let them think they were dealing with a harmless retiree. Underestimation was always an advantage. Marcus's house was a modest craftsman-style home on a tree-lined street in the Laurelhurst neighborhood. White siding, black trim, a small front porch with 2 wicker chairs where he and Linda liked to sit on summer evenings. The lawn was neatly maintained, the garden beds filled with Linda's carefully cultivated roses and lavender. It was exactly the kind of house that screamed suburban normalcy. He unlocked the front door and stepped into the smell of fresh coffee and toast. Linda was in the kitchen, still in her bathrobe, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she scrolled through something on her tablet. At 63, she had the kind of timeless elegance that Marcus had fallen in love with the moment they met at a book club meeting 15 years ago. Her hair, now silver grey, was cut in a practical bob. Her eyes, behind those glasses, were sharp with intelligence and warmth. "How was the park?" she asked without looking up. "Peaceful," Marcus replied, hanging his light jacket on the hook by the door. "Sarah and Max send their regards." Linda smiled. "That dog is better behaved than most people I know." She finally looked up. "Coffee's fresh, and I made you toast with that marmalade you like." Marcus poured himself a cup and sat at the small kitchen table across from her. This was their morning ritual. He did Tai Chi, she read the news and prepared a simple breakfast, and they spent 20 minutes together before Linda left for the Multnomah County Library, where she had worked as a senior librarian for the past 18 years. "Anything interesting happening in the world?" Marcus asked, biting into his toast. "The usual chaos," Linda said, setting down her tablet. "Political scandals, climate disasters, celebrity gossip. Sometimes I think the world is getting stranger, or maybe I'm just getting older and less tolerant of the nonsense." Marcus smiled. "We're definitely getting older. The tolerance thing is optional." Linda reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm lucky I found you, Marcus Chen. Most men your age are either cranky or boring. You're neither." "I have my moments of crankiness," Marcus said, though his smile remained. "Rarely. You're the most even-tempered person I know." Linda stood and stretched. "I need to get ready. We've got a big donation coming in today, a private collection of rare Pacific Northwest histories. I have to inventory everything." As Linda headed upstairs, Marcus sat alone with his coffee. Even-tempered. That's what everyone thought. What Linda thought. Because that's what he had trained himself to be. Emotions were liabilities in his former profession. You learned to bury them, to present whatever face the mission required. Friendly, forgettable, invisible. The problem was, Marcus had buried them so deep that sometimes he wondered if they still existed at all. Did he love Linda? Yes, absolutely. But was it the kind of love that normal people experienced? Or was it the calculated attachment of someone who had chosen stability over solitude? He had never told her about his past. How could he? What would he even say? "Linda, before I met you, I killed people for a living. Not in war, not in self-defense, but cold, calculated eliminations. I was good at it. Sometimes I still dream about it. No, the past stayed buried. That was the deal he'd made with himself." Marcus finished his coffee and went upstairs to shower. 45 minutes later, Linda kissed him goodbye at the door, reminding him that they had dinner plans with their neighbors, Tom and Elaine Robertson, that evening at 7. Marcus promised he wouldn't forget. He spent the rest of the morning doing exactly what a retired man in Portland would do. He drove to the grocery store and bought ingredients for the dumplings he planned to make that afternoon. He stopped by the hardware store to pick up some wood stain for the backyard fence that needed touch-up. He had lunch at a small Vietnamese restaurant where the owner, Mrs. Nguyen, always insisted on giving him extra spring rolls. It was all perfectly normal, perfectly routine, except Marcus was hyper-aware of every car behind him, every person who glanced his way, every detail of his surroundings. And when he returned home at 2 p.m., he noticed something that made his pulse quicken, despite his calm exterior. The mail had been disturbed. It was subtle, the kind of thing most people would never notice. But Marcus had arranged the stack of letters in his mailbox in a specific way that morning. Junk mail on the bottom, bills in the middle, a magazine on top. Now the magazine was on the bottom. Someone had gone through his mail and tried to put it back. Marcus carried the mail inside, his expression unchanged. He set it on the kitchen counter and went upstairs to his study, a small room that Linda thought was just where he did crossword puzzles and read history books. He opened the closet and moved aside several boxes until he reached a locked metal container at the back. He entered the combination and opened it. Inside was a 9mm Glock 17, fully loaded with 2 spare magazines. Beneath that, a passport under a different name, Michael Brennan, and $10,000 in cash. Emergency measures. The kind of insurance policy that operatives never fully give up, no matter how retired they claim to be. Marcus hadn't touched this container in 8 years. Now he removed the Glock, checked the magazine, chambered a round, and tucked the weapon into the back of his waistband, covering it with his shirt. The weight was familiar, comforting and terrifying at the same time. He went back downstairs and finally examined his mail properly. The third envelope was addressed to him, but there was no return address. The postmark was local, from Portland, dated 2 days ago. Marcus opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph, grainy and aged. It showed 2 men standing in front of the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. The photo was dated April 2008, written in small script on the bottom. One of the men was Marcus, looking 20 years younger, wearing a dark jacket and sunglasses. The other man was someone Marcus had tried very hard to forget. Viktor Sokolov. Marcus's hand trembled slightly as he held the photograph. Viktor had been his partner on the Berlin operation. Viktor had also been presumed dead, killed in the explosion that was meant to eliminate their target, a Russian oligarch with ties to international arms trafficking. The mission had gone catastrophically wrong. The oligarch survived. Viktor disappeared in the chaos. Marcus had filed his report, attended the closed-door memorial service at Langley, and moved on because that's what you did in this business. But if Victor was alive, and if Victor had sent this photograph, then Marcus's carefully constructed, peaceful life was about to collapse. He turned the photograph over. On the back, written in blue ink in handwriting Marcus recognized immediately, were 4 words in Russian. "Ty dolzhen мне отвечать." You owe me answers. Marcus stood in his kitchen, the afternoon light streaming through the windows, the smell of Linda's lavender soap still lingering in the air from her morning shower, and felt 15 years of peace evaporate like morning mist. Somewhere in this city, Viktor Sokolov was watching, waiting, and whatever he wanted, it wasn't going to be a friendly reunion. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just a story about a retired man doing Tai Chi. This is about secrets that refuse to stay buried and the devastating price of living a double life. What happens when Marcus's 2 worlds collide? Can he protect Linda without revealing the monster he used to be? And what does Victor really want after all these years? If you want to find out, hit that subscribe button right now, leave a like, drop a comment telling us what you think is about to happen, and share this story with someone who loves a good thriller. Trust me, what's coming next will shake you to your core. Viktor Sokolov didn't just survive Berlin, he's been planning his revenge for 12 years, and Marcus is about to discover just how far a ghost will go to settle old scores. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed next to Linda, listening to her steady breathing, watching the shadows from the streetlight outside play across the ceiling, and running through every possible scenario in his mind. Victor alive meant complications beyond measure. It meant questions that Marcus had hoped would never be asked. It meant the past had finally caught up with him, and everyone he cared about was now in potential danger. Berlin, 2008. The operation had been straightforward on paper. Track Dmitry Volkov, a Russian oligarch who was funneling weapons to insurgent groups in 3 different countries. Gather evidence, coordinate with German intelligence, and eliminate if capture proved impossible. Marcus had been paired with Viktor Sokolov, a naturalized American citizen originally from Moscow, someone who could blend into Russian circles without raising suspicion. They had worked together for 6 months, building the case, getting close to Volkov's inner circle. Victor was good, meticulous, patient, and completely fearless. They had become friends, something that was rare in their line of work. They shared meals, stories about their lives, dreams about what they'd do when they finally got out of the game. Victor had a wife and a young daughter back in Virginia. He showed Marcus pictures constantly, talked about teaching his little girl to ride a bike, about the house he was saving to buy. The mission went wrong on a Tuesday night in April. They had Volkov cornered in a warehouse in East Berlin, the extraction team positioned, the evidence secured. But someone had tipped Volkov off. When they breached the warehouse, it erupted in gunfire and chaos. An explosion, later determined to be a pre-planted incendiary device, ripped through the building's west wing. Marcus got out. The extraction team got out. Volkov's body was recovered 3 days later, killed not by the explosion but by 2 bullets to the head. Someone had executed him while Marcus and the team were fighting their way out. Victor's body was never found. The agency had declared him KIA, killed in action, body destroyed in the fire. Marcus had testified in the closed hearing. He had delivered Victor's personal effects to his widow, Irina. He had looked that woman in the eyes and told her that her husband was a hero who died serving his country. If Victor was alive, it meant one of 2 things. Either he had gone rogue during the mission, or someone at the agency had betrayed them both. Neither option was good. Linda stirred beside him, rolling over and draping an arm across his chest. Marcus forced himself to relax, to breathe normally, to be the man she thought he was. She murmured something in her sleep and settled back into stillness. Marcus stared at the ceiling until dawn began to lighten the sky. At 5:30 a.m., he slipped out of bed, dressed, and left the house without waking Linda. He drove to Laurelhurst Park, arriving well before his usual time. The parking lot was empty except for one vehicle, the dark blue Honda Accord. Marcus parked 3 spots away and got out slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward the Glock, tucked at the small of his back under his windbreaker. He approached the sedan from an angle that kept him out of direct line from the driver's window. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the asphalt. When he was within 10 feet, the driver's side window rolled down. The man inside was not Victor. He was younger, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and sharp features that suggested Eastern European ancestry. He wore a grey hoodie and regarded Marcus with an expression that was carefully neutral. "Marcus Chen," the man said. It wasn't a question. "You have me at a disadvantage," Marcus replied, his tone conversational but his body coiled and ready. "My name doesn't matter. I'm just a messenger." The man reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Marcus's hand moved toward his weapon, but the man withdrew only a phone which he held up so Marcus could see the screen. It was a live video feed. The image showed the interior of what looked like a cafe, filmed from a high angle, probably a security camera. The timestamp in the corner indicated it was live, current. The cafe was busy with the morning rush, people ordering coffee, sitting at tables with laptops and newspapers, and there, sitting at a corner table with a cappuccino and a Danish pastry, was Linda. Marcus felt ice flood his veins. Linda was supposed to be at home, still asleep. The library didn't open until 9, but there she was, clearly visible on the screen, checking her phone, completely unaware she was being watched. "This is just so you understand the situation," the man in the car said quietly. "No one wants to hurt anyone, but decisions have consequences. Victor wants to talk to you. Just talk. You come alone, you hear what he has to say, and then you can go back to your life." Or he nodded toward the phone, toward the image of Linda. "You can make this difficult, and people who don't deserve to be involved will become involved." Marcus's jaw tightened. His mind raced through options. He could kill this messenger right now, 3 different ways before the man could even scream. But that wouldn't stop whatever surveillance was on Linda. It wouldn't answer the question of how many people Victor had working with him. "When and where?" Marcus asked. The man smiled slightly. "Smart. Tonight, 9 p.m. There's an abandoned lumber mill off Highway 30 near the Sauvie Island Bridge. You know it?" Marcus did. It was isolated, surrounded by wetlands and forest, perfect for an ambush. "I'll be there," Marcus said. "Alone," the man emphasized. "And Marcus, Victor said to tell you that he's not the man you remember. Berlin changed him, so don't try anything stupid." The window rolled up. The Honda's engine started, and the car pulled out of the parking lot, leaving Marcus standing alone in the empty lot as the sun continued its climb into the morning sky. Marcus returned to his car and sat there for several minutes, forcing himself to think clearly. He couldn't go to the agency. Even if he still had contacts there, which was questionable after 15 years, involving them now would only escalate the situation. Victor had clearly been planning this for a long time. He had resources, manpower, intelligence. He knew where Marcus lived, where Linda worked, their routines. What did Victor want? Answers, the note had said. But answers to what? What had happened in Berlin? Marcus had told the truth in his reports. He had been as devastated by Victor's presumed death as anyone, unless Victor believed Marcus had betrayed him somehow, unless Victor thought Marcus had been the one who tipped off Volkov. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Linda's cell. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding slightly breathless. "Hey, sweetie," she said. "I was just about to text you. I couldn't sleep, so I got up early and decided to get some work done. I'm at that coffee shop near the library, the one with the good croissants. Did you need something?" "No," Marcus said, forcing warmth into his voice. "Just wanted to hear your voice. I'm at the park. Thought I'd do a longer session this morning." "Well, don't overdo it," Linda said. "You're not 20 anymore." "I'm very aware," Marcus replied, smiling despite the situation. "I'll see you tonight. I love you." "Love you too." Marcus ended the call and sat in the silence of his car. "I love you." He had said those words countless times over the years, and he had meant them. But now, for the first time, he wondered if Linda would ever be able to say them back if she knew the truth about who he really was. He drove home, showered, and made breakfast, even though he had no appetite. When Linda returned at 8:30, chattering about the rare books donation she was excited to examine, Marcus listened and smiled and played his part perfectly. They had a pleasant morning together. She left for work at 9:15 with a kiss and a reminder about their dinner plans with the Robertsons. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, Marcus went to his study and retrieved the emergency phone from the locked container. It was a burner cell, untraceable, with only 3 numbers programmed into it. Numbers he had sworn he would never call again. He dialed the first one. It rang 6 times before a woman's voice answered, cautious and cold. "Who is this?" "It's Marcus Chen. I need to speak with Director Hastings." There was a long pause. "Director Hastings retired 4 years ago. Then whoever replaced him. I have a situation that requires immediate attention. It involves a presumed dead operative and potential compromise." Another pause. "Hold." Marcus waited, staring out the window at his peaceful suburban street. Children were walking to school. A mailman was making his rounds. A lawn service truck was parked 2 houses down, workers unloading equipment. Normal. Mundane. The life he had built. A different voice came on the line, male, clipped, professional. "This is Deputy Director Coleman, Marcus Chen. I know that name. You were one of Hastings' people. Retired in what, 2009? 2008, Marcus corrected. I need to report that Viktor Sokolov is alive." The silence on the other end was profound. Then, "That's impossible. Sokolov was KIA in Berlin. We recovered intelligence that confirmed—" "I don't care what you recovered," Marcus interrupted. "I received a photograph yesterday of me and Viktor in Berlin. He's alive, he's in Portland, and he wants a meeting, tonight." "Do not engage," Coleman said sharply. "If Sokolov is alive, this is now an active situation. We'll send a team—" "No teams," Marcus said. "He has surveillance on my wife. She doesn't know anything about my past. If you send a team, he'll know, and civilians will be at risk. I need information, not intervention. I need to know what really happened in Berlin. Why would Viktor think I betrayed him?" Coleman was quiet for a moment. "I wasn't read in on the Berlin operation. That was before my time, but I can access the classified files. Give me 2 hours." "You have 1 hour," Marcus said. "And Coleman, if I find out the agency hung Viktor out to dry, if I find out he was sacrificed for some political game, then this conversation never happened, and you'll have a much bigger problem than one retired operative meeting with a ghost." Marcus ended the call before Coleman could respond. He spent the next hour preparing. He cleaned and checked his Glock, loaded extra magazines, and packed a small bag with first aid supplies, cash, and documents. He also wrote a letter to Linda, just in case. He sealed it in an envelope and left it in his study drawer beneath a stack of crossword puzzle books. The burner phone rang 57 minutes later. Coleman's voice was tense. "I accessed the Berlin files. You're not going to like this. Tell me. The operation was compromised before you even went in. We had intelligence that suggested Volkov knew he was being targeted. The decision was made at a level above Hastings to proceed anyway, because we needed Volkov eliminated regardless of risk to assets in the field." Marcus closed his eyes. "Assets, you mean me and Viktor? The mission was classified as acceptable loss scenario. You were both considered experienced enough to handle complications. But there's more. After the explosion, we received a communication from an asset inside Volkov's organization. They claimed Viktor wasn't killed in the explosion. They claimed he was taken by Volkov's people before the fire, that Volkov planned to use him as a bargaining chip. And the agency did nothing?" Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "We investigated, found no evidence to support the claim. The asset was deemed unreliable. The case was closed. Viktor was declared KIA, and you were rotated out 3 months later. Who was the asset?" "That information is still classified." "I don't care about your classifications, Coleman. Who was the asset?" Another pause. Then, reluctantly. "The codename was Raven. Real identity. Irina Sokolov. Viktor's wife." The world seemed to tilt. "You're telling me that Viktor's wife worked for the agency? That she tried to tell you her husband was alive and you ignored her?" "She had no proof, and her credibility was questionable given her personal involvement. Look, Chen, I understand this is difficult, but—" Marcus ended the call and threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Victor's wife had tried to save him. The agency had dismissed her, and Victor had spent the last 12 years believing he'd been abandoned, that his partner and his country had left him to die, or worse. No wonder he wanted answers. No wonder he was angry enough to threaten everything Marcus had built. Marcus had 7 hours until the meeting. He spent them doing what he did best, preparing for every contingency. He drove out to the lumber mill in the afternoon, scouting the location from a distance, identifying approach routes and escape paths. He noted the wetlands to the east, the highway access to the west, the tree line to the north. If this was an ambush, he'd at least know the terrain. He returned home by 5 p.m., just as Linda was arriving. They got ready for dinner with the Robertsons, and Marcus played his part flawlessly. He laughed at Tom's terrible jokes, complimented Elaine's pot roast, discussed the Trailblazers' chances this season, and never once let on that he was planning to meet a ghost in 3 hours. At 8:30 p.m., he told Linda he had forgotten he'd promised to help their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, move some furniture. Linda gave him a knowing smile and kissed his cheek. Always the helpful one, don't strain your back. Marcus drove toward the lumber mill, his Glock on the passenger seat, his mind running through scenarios. Best case, Victor just wanted to talk, to understand what happened, and they could both walk away. Worst case, Victor blamed Marcus for everything, for the failed mission, for his presumed death, for whatever he'd endured in the years since, and this was an execution masked as a meeting. The lumber mill emerged from the darkness like a skeleton, its broken windows and rusted machinery silhouetted against the night sky. Marcus parked a quarter-mile away and approached on foot, moving through the tree line with the silence of long practice. The Glock was in his hand, safety off. The mill's main building was 3 stories of rotting wood and corroded metal. Marcus entered through a side door that hung loosely on its hinges, his eyes adjusting to the deeper darkness inside. The smell of decay and mildew was overwhelming. "I'm here, Victor," Marcus called out, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Let's talk." Lights blazed to life, blinding him. Marcus shielded his eyes, his gun coming up, but before he could acquire a target, he heard the distinctive sound of multiple weapons being cocked, surrounding him from at least 4 different positions. "Put down the gun, Marcus." Victor's voice came from the darkness beyond the lights. "You're not walking out of here unless I allow it." Marcus hesitated, then slowly crouched and set the Glock on the floor, raising his hands. "Kick it away." Marcus did. The lights dimmed slightly, and Victor Sokolov stepped into view. He had aged badly. The man Marcus remembered had been vital, energetic, always quick with a smile. This Victor was gaunt, his hair prematurely grey, his face marked by scars, one particularly nasty one running from his left temple down to his jaw. He walked with a slight limp, and his eyes held the kind of cold rage that Marcus had seen only in men who had nothing left to lose. "Hello, old friend," Victor said, the words dripping with bitterness. "Did you enjoy the last 12 years? While I was rotting in a Russian prison, were you living your quiet little life, feeding pigeons and pretending you're just another retiree?" "Victor, I thought you were dead," Marcus said carefully. "We all did. If I had known—" "You would have what?" Victor interrupted, taking another step closer. "Mounted a rescue? Called in favors? Or would you have done exactly what you did? Filed your report, collected your pension, and moved on?" "I tried," Marcus said, his voice firm. "I spent 6 months following up every lead, every rumor. The agency closed the case. You were gone." Victor laughed, but there was no humor in it. The agency, always hiding behind the agency. "Tell me, Marcus, did they also tell you about my wife, about how Irina tried to tell them I was alive, about how they threatened to take our daughter away if she didn't stop making noise?" Marcus said nothing. There was nothing he could say. "I survived, Marcus. Volkov's people kept me alive because they thought I had information about other operations. They tortured me for 8 months before I escaped. When I finally made it back to the States, do you know what I found? My wife had killed herself. My daughter was in foster care, traumatized and alone, and the agency claimed they had no record of Irina's reports, no record of her desperate attempts to save me." "I didn't know," Marcus said quietly. "Victor, I swear to you I didn't know any of this." "But you should have." Victor's voice rose, echoing through the mill. "You were my partner. You were supposed to have my back." "So, What do you think so far? Is Marcus telling the truth? Can Victor ever forgive him? Drop a comment and let us know your thoughts on this intense confrontation. And if you're hooked on this story, we're just getting started. The revelations coming in the next chapter will blow your mind. Stay with us. The tension in the abandoned lumber mill was suffocating. Marcus stood with his hands still raised, surrounded by armed men he couldn't fully see, facing a ghost who had every reason to want him dead. But years of training had taught Marcus that the most dangerous moments were also the ones that created opportunities. Victor was emotional. Anger clouded judgment, and Marcus needed to use that. "You're right," Marcus said, his voice calm but carrying genuine remorse. "I should have pushed harder. I should have questioned the official story. I failed you as a partner, and I'm sorry. But Victor, killing me won't bring Irina back. It won't give you back those years. And it sure as hell won't help your daughter." Victor's expression flickered. There it was, the crack in the armor. His daughter. "Don't you dare talk about Natasha," Victor hissed. "You have no right—" "Where is she now?" Marcus asked. "Is she safe? Does she know you're alive?" "She thinks her father is dead," Victor said, his voice breaking slightly. "Because that's safer for her. The people who did this to us, to our family, they're still out there, Marcus. They're still in positions of power. If they knew I was alive, if they knew I was talking, Natasha would be a target. So yes, she thinks I'm dead, and I have to live with that every single day." Marcus lowered his hands slightly, a calculated risk. "Then what is this about? Revenge? Justice? Because if you kill me here, you accomplish nothing except adding another body to the count." Victor pulled out a gun, a Beretta 9mm, and pointed it directly at Marcus's chest. His hand was steady, no tremor, no hesitation. This was a man who had made his decision long before tonight. "This is about truth," Victor said. "I need to know what really happened. I need to know if you were part of the betrayal or if you were just another expendable asset they were willing to sacrifice. I've spent 4 years tracking down everyone involved in that operation. Do you know what I found?" Marcus said nothing, waiting. 3 of the 5 intelligence officers who planned the Berlin mission are dead. Car accident in Virginia, house fire in Maryland, heart attack in Florida, all within the last 18 months, all officially ruled as natural causes or accidents. But I know better, Marcus. Someone is cleaning house, eliminating anyone who knew the truth about what happened. Marcus's mind raced. If Victor was telling the truth, then this was bigger than a failed operation. This was about a cover-up that someone was still actively protecting. "Who ordered the mission?" Marcus asked. "Who was above Hastings?" "That's what I need you to help me find out," Victor said, lowering the gun slightly. "Because whoever it was, they're the reason my wife is dead, my daughter has no family, and I've spent 12 years living like an animal. And Marcus, they're also the reason you're in danger right now, even if you don't realize it yet." Before Marcus could respond, one of the hidden gunmen spoke up. "We've got movement. 2 vehicles approaching from the east, moving fast." Victor's expression changed instantly, anger replaced by cold calculation. "How far?" "Quarter mile and closing." Victor cursed in Russian and turned to Marcus. "Did you bring them here? Did you call the agency?" "I made 1 call this morning to get information," Marcus admitted, "but I told them not to send anyone. This must be—" "It doesn't matter what you told them," Victor snapped. He gestured to his men. "Positions. If they breach, we light them up. No survivors." "Wait," Marcus said urgently. "Victor, if you start a firefight with agency operatives, there's no coming back from that. They'll hunt you forever. And they'll use it as justification to bury everything about Berlin even deeper." "Then what do you suggest?" Victor demanded. "We sit here and let them take us both? You might trust them, but I sure as hell don't." Marcus's mind worked rapidly. The old mill had 3 main exits, the front entrance, the loading dock on the south side, and a maintenance tunnel that likely led to the water treatment area near the river. If the agency was coming from the east, they'd expect targets to flee west toward the highway. The tunnel would be the last place they'd look. "There's a tunnel," Marcus said quickly. "Southeast corner, probably behind that old office structure. We go now together, and we figure this out without more bloodshed." "And why would I trust you?" Victor asked. "Because I'm the only person who believes your story, and has any chance of helping you prove it, Marcus said. And because if you wanted me dead, you would have pulled that trigger already. Whatever else you are, Victor, you're not a cold-blooded killer. You're a father trying to protect his daughter and get justice for his wife. The sound of vehicles grew louder. Tires on gravel, multiple engines. Victor stared at Marcus for a long moment, then made his decision. Fine, but if you try anything, I'll put a bullet in your spine. Let's move. Marcus grabbed his Glock from the floor as Victor shouted orders to his men in rapid-fire Russian. The group, Marcus, Victor, and 4 armed operatives who emerged from the shadows, moved quickly through the mill toward the southeast corner. Marcus had been right. There was an old maintenance access, a rusted metal door that led to a concrete tunnel system. They had just descended into the tunnel when they heard the first shouts above, the sound of boots on wood, tactical teams clearing the building. The tunnel was dark, lit only by flashlights from Victor's men. Water dripped from overhead pipes, and the smell of rust and decay was even worse down here. They moved single file, Marcus in the middle of the group, Victor directly behind him with the gun still trained on his back. "Where does this lead?" Victor asked quietly. "If the city maps I studied are accurate, it connects to the old water treatment facility about half a mile from here. From there, we can access the industrial park." "You studied city maps of abandoned facilities?" Victor said, something almost like their old camaraderie creeping into his voice. Still the careful planner. "Old habits," Marcus replied. They moved in silence for several minutes, the sounds of pursuit growing distant behind them. Marcus's mind was working through the implications of the agency's arrival. Coleman had promised information, not intervention. Either Coleman had lied, or someone higher up had overruled him. Either way, it meant Victor was right. Someone wanted this buried badly enough to risk a firefight in the middle of Oregon. They emerged from the tunnel into the ruins of the water treatment facility, a sprawling complex of broken concrete basins and collapsed structures. The night air felt clean after the tunnel's oppression. Victor's men fanned out, checking for threats. "We need to separate," Victor said. "My people will create a distraction, draw any pursuit away. You and I go to ground separately, then meet tomorrow to plan our next move." "Where?" Marcus asked. Victor pulled out a phone and showed Marcus an address on the screen. It was a storage facility in North Portland, unit number 247. "Noon tomorrow. Come alone. And Marcus, if you betray me again, your wife won't just be surveilled. She'll become a bargaining chip. Do we understand each other?" Marcus's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "We understand each other. But Victor, you need to understand something too. Linda doesn't know anything about my past. She's innocent in all of this. Whatever happens between us, whatever we need to do to expose the truth, she stays out of it." "That depends entirely on you," Victor said. Then he gestured to one of his men who handed Marcus a burner phone. "If you need to reach me before noon, use this. It's encrypted. Don't make any other calls on it." Victor and his team disappeared into the industrial park, leaving Marcus alone in the ruins. He waited 10 minutes, listening to the distant sounds of sirens and helicopters, then began making his way on foot toward a bus stop he knew was about 2 miles west. It was nearly midnight when Marcus finally made it back to his car, which he'd left hidden in a residential area a mile from the lumber mill. He drove home carefully, watching for tails, taking random turns to ensure he wasn't being followed. The house was dark when he arrived. Linda was asleep. Marcus stood in their bedroom doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep, wondering how much longer he could keep her safe, keep her ignorant of the nightmare that was unfolding around them. He went to his study and sat in the darkness, the Glock on the desk in front of him, the burner phone Victor had given him beside it. For 15 years, he had successfully buried Marcus Chen, the operative. But that man was back now, whether he wanted it or not. And the skills, the instincts, the cold calculations, they had never really left. They had just been waiting. His regular phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Urgent. Delete this message after reading." It was from Coleman or someone claiming to be him. Marcus deleted the message without responding. He didn't trust the agency anymore. He barely trusted anyone. But tomorrow he would meet with Victor, and together they would start piecing together what really happened in Berlin and who was desperate enough to kill to keep it hidden. The question was, Whether Marcus could do this without losing everything, his marriage, his peaceful life, his very identity in the process. He sat in the study until dawn, not sleeping, just thinking and planning. When Linda came downstairs at 6:30 a.m., Marcus was in the kitchen making coffee, freshly showered, looking like nothing was wrong. "You're up early," she said, kissing his cheek. "Did you sleep okay?" "Like a baby," Marcus lied smoothly. "How about you?" "Good, though I had the strangest dream. You were in some kind of danger, and I couldn't reach you." She laughed at herself. "Silly, I know." Marcus smiled and handed her a cup of coffee. "Just a dream. I'm right here, safe and sound." But as Linda chatted about her plans for the day, Marcus was already mentally preparing for the meeting with Victor. Somewhere in the past, in the classified files and buried reports, was the truth about Berlin. And somewhere in the present, someone was willing to kill to keep that truth buried. Marcus Chen had spent 15 years being invisible. Now it was time to become visible again, to step back into the shadows and hunt the people who had destroyed Victor's life and threatened his own. At his core, beneath all the suburban normalcy, Marcus was still what he had always been, a weapon, and weapons, once activated, were very hard to stop. The morning passed in painful normalcy. Marcus did his Tai Chi in the park, noting that the blue Honda was nowhere to be seen. He ran errands. He had lunch with Linda at her library. And at 11:30 a.m., he told her he had an appointment with a financial advisor about their retirement accounts. "Sounds boring," Linda said, smiling. "Don't let them talk you into anything risky. We're at the age where boring and stable is exactly what we want." "Boring and stable," Marcus agreed. "That's me." He drove to the storage facility in North Portland, a nondescript building in an industrial area. Unit 247 was on the second floor, at the end of a long corridor. Marcus approached carefully, his hand near his weapon, his senses alert for any sign of ambush. He knocked twice. The door opened immediately. Victor stood there, looking exhausted but alert. Behind him, the storage unit had been converted into a makeshift operations center. Laptops, documents spread across a table, a corkboard covered with photographs and strings connecting them. "Welcome to my office," Victor said with dark humor. "It's not much, but it's off the grid." Marcus entered, and Victor locked the door behind him. For a moment, they stood there, two former partners who had once trusted each other with their lives, now separated by years of pain and betrayal. "I need to show you something," Victor said, moving to the table. "This is everything I've uncovered about Berlin. Names, dates, bank transfers, classified communications. The mission was never about stopping Volkov. It was about eliminating him because he had evidence of something much bigger. A conspiracy that went all the way to the top of American and Russian intelligence." Marcus leaned over the documents, his trained eye quickly assessing the information. What he saw made his blood run cold. Volkov hadn't been just an arms dealer. He had been a middleman for an operation that involved officials from both governments, using weapons sales to fund black ops that neither country could officially acknowledge. "If this is true," Marcus said slowly, "then Berlin was a clean-up operation. They sent us in to eliminate Volkov and anyone who might have seen these records. And when I survived," Victor continued, "when I was taken by Volkov's people, I became a liability. They couldn't risk me talking about what I might have learned. So they declared me dead, silenced my wife, and hoped the problem would go away." "But you didn't go away," Marcus said. "No, I spent 12 years surviving, planning, and gathering evidence, and now I'm going to expose every single person who was involved, no matter how high up they are." Marcus looked at his former partner. "Victor, if we do this, we're not just taking on a few corrupt officials. We're taking on entire intelligence apparatus of 2 countries. They'll come at us with everything they have." "I know," Victor said. "That's why I need your help. You still have connections, knowledge of how they operate. Together we have a chance. Alone, I'm just another conspiracy theorist who will end up dead in an apparent suicide." Marcus thought of Linda, of the quiet life he had built, of the peace he had found. Thought of the letter he had written to her, still hidden in his study. Then he thought of Irina Sokolov, Victor's wife, desperate and ignored, driven to take her own life. He thought of Natasha, growing up without either parent because of lies and cover-ups. He extended his hand to Victor. Partners again. But we do this smart. No more bodies unless absolutely necessary. We expose them legally, publicly, in a way they can't sweep under the rug. Victor gripped his hand firmly. Partners. Though I should warn you, Marcus, what we're about to do will destroy your quiet life. Once we start, there's no going back to normal. I know, Marcus said, but maybe normal was always an illusion anyway. They spent the next 3 hours going through Victor's evidence, planning their approach, identifying targets and vulnerabilities. It was like old times, the two of them working in perfect synchronization, anticipating each other's thoughts. But in the back of Marcus's mind, one question kept nagging. How long could he keep this from Linda? How long before his two worlds collided in a way he couldn't control? The answer came sooner than he expected. At 3 p.m., Marcus's personal phone rang. It was Linda, and her voice was shaking. Marcus, there are men here at the library. They say they're FBI, but they're asking questions about you, about our life together. Marcus, what's happening? They're scaring me. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Linda, listen to me very carefully. Don't tell them anything. Say you want a lawyer. I'm coming right now. But Marcus... Trust me. I'll explain everything. Just don't say anything until I get there. He ended the call and turned to Victor. They're going after Linda. They're using her to get to me. Victor's expression darkened. Then we accelerate the timeline. No more careful planning. We go public now before they can do any more damage. Marcus and Victor moved with the practiced efficiency of the operatives they had once been, grabbing the most critical evidence and leaving the storage unit within minutes. As they drove toward the library in Victor's stolen sedan, because of course Victor had stolen it, Marcus called the one person he thought might still be clean in the agency. Sarah Reeves had been an analyst when Marcus retired, someone known for her integrity and her refusal to play political games. If anyone would listen, it would be her. She answered on the second ring. Marcus Chen, I heard you'd surfaced. I also heard you're in a lot of trouble. Sarah, I need your help. They're going after my wife to get to me. I have evidence of corruption that goes back to Berlin, but I need protection, and I need it now. Berlin, Sarah repeated. Marcus, I've been digging into Berlin for the past 6 hours, ever since Coleman reported your call yesterday. There are gaps in the files, redactions that shouldn't exist, and 3 of the officers involved are dead. What exactly did you stumble into? The truth, Marcus said, and it's bigger than I thought. Can you help? There was a long pause, then, meet me at the Federal Building downtown. 30 minutes. I'll bring protective detail for your wife. But Marcus, if you're lying, if this is some kind of rogue operation, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in a cell. Fair enough, Marcus said. See you in 30. They made it to the library in 15 minutes. The FBI agents, or whoever they really were still there, questioning Linda in a back office. Marcus walked in with Victor right behind him, and the look on the agents' faces told him everything he needed to know. These weren't real FBI. Gentlemen, Marcus said calmly, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My wife has nothing to do with any of this, but if you'd like to ask me questions, I'm happy to answer them. Downtown, at the Federal Building with proper legal representation. The lead agent, a man with cold eyes and a bad suit, smiled unpleasantly. I don't think you understand your situation, Mr. Chen. You've been consorting with a known fugitive and suspected terrorist. That makes you complicit in... He never finished the sentence. Victor moved so fast that even Marcus almost missed it. One moment Victor was standing by the door, the next he had the agent's weapon arm twisted behind his back, the gun now in Victor's possession. Let's all stay calm, Victor said pleasantly. Because if anyone here is a terrorist, it's the people who sent you. Now you're going to let Mrs. Chen walk out of here with her husband, or I'm going to start asking very loud questions about why the FBI is harassing civilians without proper identification or warrants. The other agent reached for his weapon, but Marcus was already there, his Glock out and trained. I wouldn't, he said quietly. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Linda's voice broke the silence, shocked and confused. Marcus, what is happening? Who are these people? What are you doing with a gun? Marcus kept his weapon trained on the agents. but turned his head slightly toward his wife. "Linda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have told you years ago, but right now I need you to trust me. We're going to walk out of here, and then I'll explain everything." "You're scaring me," Linda whispered. "I know, but I promise you I will never let anyone hurt you. That's the truth. That's always been the truth." Victor released the agent and stepped back, still holding the confiscated weapon. "Tick-tock, gentlemen, what's it going to be?" The lead agent's jaw tightened, but he gestured for his partner to stand down. "This isn't over, Chen. Not even close." "I'm counting on it," Marcus replied. They left the library with Linda between them, her face pale with shock and fear. They made it to Victor's car and drove straight for the federal building, where Sarah Reeves was waiting with actual FBI agents, actual protection, and actual answers. The next several hours were a blur of debriefings, document reviews, and increasingly high-level officials getting involved. Sarah, true to her word, provided protection for Linda and listened to everything Victor and Marcus had to say. The evidence was damning, undeniable, and exactly the kind of scandal that would rock both governments. But through it all, Marcus kept one eye on Linda. She sat in a separate room, being interviewed by a victim advocate, her whole world shattered by revelations she never could have anticipated. When they finally had a moment alone, in a secure conference room with armed guards outside, Linda looked at Marcus with eyes full of tears and something that might have been betrayal. "Who are you?" she asked simply. "Because the man I married, the man I thought I knew for 15 years, that man doesn't carry guns and fight federal agents and have secret meetings with fugitives." Marcus wanted to reach for her, but he stopped himself. "I'm the same man who loves you, who's loved you since the day we met. But you're right. There are parts of my past I never told you about. I was an operative for the CIA for 33 years. I did things I'm not proud of, and when I retired I thought I could leave all of that behind and just be Marcus, the man who does Tai Chi in the park and makes dumplings for block parties. But the past doesn't let go that easily." "You lied to me," Linda said, her voice breaking. "For 15 years you lied to me about who you are." "I did," Marcus admitted. "And I'm sorry. I told myself I was protecting you, that you were safer not knowing. But the truth is I was also protecting myself. I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, what I'd done, you wouldn't be able to love me anymore." Linda wiped her eyes. "Did you kill people, Marcus?" He met her gaze directly. "Yes." "A lot of people?" "Yes." She looked away, struggling with the truth. "I need time. I need to process all of this. I can't just... I don't know if I can look at you the same way anymore." "I understand," Marcus said quietly. "Take all the time you need. But Linda, please know this. Everything I've done since meeting you, every choice I've made, has been about protecting you and building a life with you. That was never a lie." Before Linda could respond, Sarah Reeves entered the room. "We've made a decision. The evidence you've provided is sufficient to open a formal investigation. We'll be taking both you and Sokolov into protective custody while we verify everything and build the case. Mrs. Chen, you'll also be under protection until we're certain there's no threat to you." "So what happens now?" Linda asked. "Now," Sarah said, "we expose the truth and we make sure the people responsible for this conspiracy face justice. Thank you so much for staying with us through this intense chapter. Your commitment to this story means everything, and trust me when I say the best is absolutely still to come." We're approaching the climax, where secrets that have been buried for over a decade will finally surface, and Marcus will have to make the most difficult choice of his life. The next chapter is going to reveal connections and betrayals that will leave you speechless. Don't go anywhere. The FBI safe house was located in a quiet suburb of Beaverton, a nondescript two-story colonial that looked exactly like every other house on the block. Inside, Marcus, Victor, and Linda were each given separate rooms, armed agents rotating shifts outside, Sarah Reeves coordinating the investigation from a command center set up in the dining room. It had been 3 days since the confrontation at the library, 3 days of constant debriefings, document analysis, and watching the investigation unfold. 3 days during which Linda had barely spoken to Marcus beyond the absolute minimum required for the situation. Marcus stood at the window of his assigned bedroom, watching the suburban street below, thinking about the irony. He had spent 15 years living in a house almost identical to this one, playing at normalcy. Now he was in an actual safe house, and normalcy felt more distant than ever. There was a soft knock at the door. Victor entered without waiting for an answer, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," Victor said, handing one to Marcus. "Sarah's pulling another all-nighter. She found something in the financial records, something big." Marcus took the coffee gratefully. "What kind of big?" "The kind that explains everything," Victor said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "The Berlin operation wasn't just about silencing Volkov. It was about stealing his evidence before eliminating him. Evidence that proved high-ranking officials were diverting weapons to conflict zones, then using the destabilization to justify increased defense spending. Billions of dollars, Marcus. They were creating the very threats they claimed to be protecting us from." Marcus absorbed this. "And we were the cleanup crew, sent in to eliminate the witness and recover the evidence. Except I wasn't supposed to survive," Victor added. "The explosion wasn't an accident. It was meant to kill both Volkov and me, making sure there were no loose ends. You survived because you were positioned outside. Luck, or maybe they considered you trustworthy enough not to ask questions. But you did survive, and Volkov had already given copies of his evidence to someone else as insurance." Victor nodded. "His daughter. She was 19 at the time, living in London studying art history. She had no idea what was in the encrypted drive her father gave her for safekeeping. After Volkov was killed, she disappeared, changed her name, went underground. She's been living in the United States for the past 10 years under a false identity." Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. "And someone's been looking for her. That's why the cover-up has continued all these years. They need to find that evidence and destroy it." "Sarah thinks she's found her," Victor said quietly. "And Marcus, you're not going to believe where she's been hiding." Before Victor could continue, Sarah Reeves burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement and horror. "We need to talk. All of us. Conference room. Now." 5 minutes later, they were gathered around the dining room table. Marcus, Victor, Linda, Sarah, and 2 senior FBI agents named Patterson and Gomez. Sarah had her laptop open, displaying a series of photographs and documents. "I found Volkov's daughter," Sarah began without preamble. "Her birth name was Ekaterina Volkova. After her father's death, she entered the United States on a student visa under the name Catherine Brennan. She's been living in Portland for 8 years. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Portland, the same city where he had chosen to retire. That couldn't be coincidence. "Where in Portland?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Sarah pulled up a photograph. It showed a young woman, early 30s, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She was standing in front of a familiar building. "She works at the Multnomah County Library," Sarah said. "Has been for the past 6 years. She's a research librarian specializing in Eastern European history." Linda's face went pale. "I know her. Catherine Brennan. She works in my department. We have lunch together sometimes. She's been to our house." The room fell silent as everyone processed this revelation. Marcus felt reality tilting around him. Catherine Volkov, daughter of the man whose death had started all of this, had been working alongside Linda for 6 years, in the same building, in the same department. "That's not all," Sarah continued grimly. "I pulled Catherine's employment records. Her job application included a recommendation letter from a reference at Georgetown University. The professor who wrote that letter, he's been on the CIA payroll for 20 years as an asset recruiter. Catherine didn't stumble into Portland by accident. She was placed here. Deliberately." "By who?" Victor demanded. "And why?" "That's the question," Sarah said. "Either someone in the conspiracy planted her there to keep an eye on Marcus, or someone outside the conspiracy placed her there, hoping Marcus would make contact and lead them to her." Marcus's mind raced back through the past 6 years. How many times had Catherine been at their house? How many block parties, dinners, casual conversations? She had always been friendly but reserved, never prying, never asking personal questions. Had she known who Marcus really was? Had she known her father's killer was sleeping under the same roof as Linda? "We need to bring her in," Agent Patterson said. "If she has Volkov's evidence, she could be in immediate danger. And if she's been compromised, she could be a threat." "She's at work right now," Linda said quietly, her voice strained. Her shift started at 9. I was supposed to meet her for lunch at noon to go over the quarterly budget review. Sarah checked her watch. It's 10:30 now. We have a team ready to go. Mrs. Chen, I'm going to need you to call Catherine. Tell her you need to meet early. Something urgent came up. We'll do the extraction at the library. Minimize public exposure. Linda looked at Marcus, and for the first time since the truth had come out, he saw something other than hurt and betrayal in her eyes. He saw fear. Is Catherine in danger because of me? Because of us? She's in danger because her father made powerful enemies, Marcus said. But yes, the fact that she's been close to us probably hasn't helped. They may have been watching her, waiting to see if she'd lead them to the evidence. Or waiting to see if you'd make contact with her, Victor added. If they suspected you knew more about Berlin than you'd reported, Catherine would be the perfect bait. Linda pulled out her phone with shaking hands. What do I say? Sarah moved to her side. Keep it simple. Tell her you need to meet at 11 instead of noon, something about a scheduling conflict, nothing that would raise alarm. Linda made the call. Marcus watched her struggle to keep her voice normal, professional, as she spoke with Catherine. When she ended the call, she looked like she might be sick. She's meeting me at 11 in the staff break room. She sounded normal, happy even. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I thought she was my friend. She might be, Marcus said gently. We don't know how much she knows about any of this. She might be as much a victim as anyone. The next 30 minutes were spent preparing. Agent Patterson and his team would be positioned throughout the library, disguised as patrons. Sarah would coordinate from a van parked outside. Victor would stay at the safe house, as his presence would only complicate things. And Marcus, despite his protests, was ordered to stay back as well. Your face is too well known in that library, Sarah explained. If anyone's watching Catherine, you showing up would trigger an immediate response. Then let me go, Linda said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at her. She stood up straighter, her fear transforming into determination. She trusts me. If your agents come in and try to extract her, she'll know something's wrong. She might run, or worse, she might signal whoever she's working with. But if I talk to her, if I tell her I need help, she'll listen. Mrs. Chen, you're not trained for this, Agent Gomez protested. No, but I'm her friend, Linda insisted. Or at least she thinks I am. Let me try. Give me an earpiece so you can hear everything. Have your agents ready, but let me make the initial contact. Sarah considered this, then looked at Marcus. It's her call. But if you have objections... Marcus wanted to object. Every instinct screamed at him to keep Linda out of danger. But he also knew she was right. Catherine would trust Linda in a way she'd never trust federal agents. If Linda wants to do this, Marcus said slowly, then we make sure she's protected. Every angle covered. At the first sign of trouble, we pull her out. Linda met his eyes. Thank you for trusting me. Always, Marcus replied. At 10:45 a.m., Linda entered the Multnomah County Library, wearing a wire and an earpiece so small it was invisible. Marcus listened to the audio feed from the van outside, his heart pounding, every muscle tense. Linda's voice came through, slightly distorted but clear. Catherine, thank you for meeting early. Catherine's voice, younger and warmer. Of course, is everything okay? You sounded stressed on the phone. Can we talk somewhere private? Not the break room, maybe the archive room in the basement? A pause. Sure. That's kind of mysterious, but okay. Lead the way. Marcus listened as Linda guided Catherine through the library to the basement archive room, a secure area with controlled access and, critically, only one entrance. Patterson's team was already in position in the hallway outside. Once they were inside, Linda closed the door. For a moment there was only silence. Then Linda spoke, her voice strong despite the fear Marcus knew she must be feeling. Catherine, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Is your real name Ekaterina Volkova? The silence that followed was deafening. Then Catherine's voice suddenly cold and wary. How do you know that name? Because the FBI knows who you are. They know about your father, about the evidence he left you, about Berlin, and they know you've been working here close to me for 6 years. What I need to know is why. Are you using me to get to my husband?" "Your husband?" Catherine sounded genuinely confused. "Linda, what are you talking about? What does Marcus have to do with any of this?" "He was there," Linda said, her voice breaking. "In Berlin. He was one of the operatives sent to kill your father." The sound that came through the wire was raw and painful, a gasp, maybe a sob. Then Catherine spoke, her voice thick with emotion. No, that's not... Linda, I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know who Marcus was. I didn't even know where you lived when I applied for this job. The man who helped me get placed here, the professor who wrote my recommendation, he told me Portland was safe, that no one would look for me here. He never mentioned Marcus. He never mentioned any operatives. Then why did he send you to Portland specifically? Sarah's voice came through calm and professional, but with an edge of intensity. Catherine was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small, defeated. He said, someone wanted to keep me safe. Someone who felt guilty about what happened to my father. Someone who was trying to make amends. I thought he meant someone from the CIA who disagreed with the operation. I never imagined... You never imagined it was the man married to your supervisor, Linda finished. Linda, I'm so sorry, Catherine said, crying now. I've had coffee in your home. I've met your neighbors. You've been nothing but kind to me, and I brought all of this to your door without even knowing it. In the van, Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. The professor who'd placed Catherine, the recommendation, the careful orchestration. Someone had been manipulating all of them for years, and Marcus had a terrible suspicion about who. Sarah, he said urgently. The professor at Georgetown who recommended Catherine. What was his name? Sarah pulled up the file. Dr. Richard Hastings, taught international relations before retiring 3 years ago too. She stopped, her face going pale. Oh my God. He's Director Hastings' brother. Director Charles Hastings, Marcus's former boss, the man who had run the Berlin operation. The man who had retired 4 years ago under mysterious circumstances that Marcus had never questioned. It was Hastings, Marcus said, everything clicking into place. He set up the Berlin operation. When it went wrong, when Victor survived, Hastings spent years covering it up, but he also felt guilty. So he tried to protect Catherine, tried to keep her safe by placing her near me, knowing I'd retired and wouldn't ask questions. He thought he could control all the variables. But someone else found out, Victor said from across the van. Someone else realized Catherine was the key to the evidence and has been hunting her. As if summoned by their words, Agent Patterson's voice came through the wire, urgent and alarmed. We've got a problem. 3 unknowns just entered the library, moving with purpose toward the basement. They're armed. I repeat, armed subjects heading toward the archive room. Marcus was moving before anyone could stop him, grabbing a tactical vest from the equipment locker and running toward the library entrance. Behind him, he heard Sarah shouting orders, Victor cursing, agents mobilizing. Marcus hit the library at a dead run, his weapon drawn, his training taking over. He could hear gunfire now coming from the basement level. Patterson's team engaging the unknowns, civilians screaming and running for exits. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his mind crystal clear, all emotion stripped away. This was what he was. Not the gentle man who did Tai Chi in the park. This, the operative, the weapon, the thing he'd spent 15 years trying to forget. The basement hallway was chaos. 2 of Patterson's agents were down, wounded but alive. The third was engaged in a firefight with 3 men in tactical gear. Marcus moved like water, his Tai Chi training merging with combat instincts, flowing around cover, his shots precise and economical. 2 shots, 2 targets down. The third spun toward him, but Marcus was already moving, a classic snake creeps down that brought him low as bullets passed over his head, then rising with a shot that ended the threat. The hallway went silent, except for the ringing in Marcus's ears and the sound of his own breathing. He moved to the archive room door and kicked it open. Inside, Linda was shielding Catherine with her own body, both of them huddled behind a row of filing cabinets. They looked up as Marcus entered, and the expression on Linda's face, fear, relief, recognition, said everything. She was seeing him fully now, Not the man she'd married, but the operative he'd always been. "It's over," Marcus said, lowering his weapon. "You're both safe." Catherine stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "You're Marcus Chen. You were there when my father died." "I was," Marcus said simply. There was no point in denying it. "Did you kill him?" Marcus met her eyes directly. "No. Someone else put the bullets in him. But I was part of the operation, and for that I'm sorry." Catherine nodded slowly, processing this. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small external hard drive. "This is what they want. My father's evidence. Everything he knew about the conspiracy. I've kept it hidden for 12 years, always moving, always afraid. I'm tired of running." She handed the drive to Marcus. "He told me that if anything happened to him, I should find someone I could trust and give this to them. Someone who would do the right thing. I think you're that person." Marcus took the drive, feeling its weight. "We'll make sure the truth comes out, I promise you that." "My father used to say something," Catherine said quietly. "He said that in our world there are no heroes, only people trying to do less harm than good. I think that's all any of us can hope for." The FBI moved quickly after that. The evidence on Catherine's drive was everything they needed: names, dates, financial transactions, intercepted communications. Within 24 hours, warrants were issued. Within 48 hours, arrests began. High-ranking officials in both the CIA and Russian intelligence, defense contractors, politicians. The conspiracy was larger than even Victor had imagined. Director Charles Hastings turned himself in voluntarily, making a full confession. He had authorized the Berlin operation under pressure from above, then spent years trying to protect the people he'd put in harm's way. His brother had helped place Catherine, not knowing that other elements of the conspiracy were still hunting her. Victor was quietly cleared of all charges, his service record restored posthumously, and then revised to show he'd been operating undercover for the past 12 years. It was a fiction, but one that allowed him to finally reconnect with his daughter, Natasha, who was now 26 and working as a nurse in Seattle. Marcus was there when they reunited, saw the moment Victor wrapped his daughter in his arms and wept openly for the first time since Berlin. The story was all over the news for weeks. The biggest intelligence scandal in decades. Marcus and Victor were offered medals, commendations, apologies from the highest levels of government. They both declined, asking only for privacy and the chance to rebuild their lives. But the question that haunted Marcus was whether he still had a life to rebuild. Linda had moved back to their house after the safe house, but she'd taken the guest bedroom. They were polite to each other, careful, like strangers learning to navigate shared space. She went to work. He did his Tai Chi in the park. They existed in parallel but separate worlds under the same roof. One evening, 2 months after everything ended, Marcus found her in the garden, tending to her roses in the fading light. He sat on the porch steps, watching her work, waiting. Finally, without turning around, Linda spoke. "I've been seeing a therapist. She specializes in trauma and betrayal." "That's good," Marcus said. "She asked me what I wanted, if I wanted to save the marriage or end it." Linda turned to face him, her expression unreadable in the twilight. "I told her I didn't know, because I don't know who I'm married to anymore." "You're married to me," Marcus said quietly. "I'm the same person I've always been. I just had parts of my life I couldn't share." "That's the problem, Marcus. Marriage is about sharing everything, the good, the bad, the terrible. You shared the easy parts and hid the hard ones. You made that decision for both of us." Marcus nodded, accepting this. "You're right, I was selfish. I wanted the life we built, but I didn't trust you enough to let you decide if you could accept all of me. I'm sorry for that." Linda came and sat beside him on the steps. They sat in silence for a long moment, the evening sounds of their neighborhood settling around them, distant laughter, a dog barking, the hum of traffic on the main road. "The therapist asked me another question," Linda said. "She asked if the man you showed me during the crisis, the one who ran into danger to save Catherine and me, the one who fought to expose the truth, if that man was someone I could love. And the answer is yes, I can love that man. I do love that man." Marcus felt hope kindle in his chest. "But," Linda continued, and the hope flickered, "I don't know if I can forgive him for hiding from me for 15 years. I don't know if I can trust you again. And without trust, I don't know what we have." "Whatever you need," Marcus said. However long it takes, I'll wait. I'll work for it because you're worth it. Linda looked at him, really looked at him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen in months. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of love returning. "I'm not making any promises," she said, "but I'm willing to try. If you're willing to be completely honest from now on. No more secrets, no more lies." "No more secrets," Marcus agreed. "No more lies." They sat together as darkness fell. Two people who had been strangers for 15 years, learning to truly know each other for the first time. It wasn't the happy ending Marcus had hoped for when he retired, but it was honest. It was real. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough. We're so close to the end now, and if you've stayed with us through this emotional roller coaster, you deserve to see how Marcus and Linda's story truly resolves. Will their marriage survive? Will Victor find peace? And what will Marcus do with his newfound freedom from the secrets that have haunted him for so long? The final chapter is going to tie everything together in a way that will leave you feeling fulfilled and moved. And if you're still watching this far, it's because this story has touched something in you. Do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button and smash that like button so you don't miss our next incredible story. We have more tales of redemption, betrayal, and second chances coming your way, and you won't want to miss a single one. Stick with us for the conclusion. You've come this far. See it through to the end. 6 months had passed since the truth came out. 6 months since the conspiracy was exposed, since Victor and Marcus's names were cleared, since the world learned about Berlin and the corruption that had nearly destroyed them all. The news cycle had moved on, as it always did, to new scandals and fresh outrages, but for the people involved, the healing was slower, more complicated. Marcus still did his Tai Chi in Laurelhurst Park every morning at 6 a.m. But now sometimes Victor joined him. They moved through the forms together in silence, two old warriors finding peace in familiar movements. Some mornings, other people joined them. Retirees, young professionals, even teenagers who'd seen videos of Marcus on social media and wanted to learn from the man the internet had dubbed the most dangerous senior citizen in America. Marcus hated the nickname but appreciated the interest. Teaching Tai Chi had become something real for him, something honest. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, he held free classes in the park. He taught the movements, but he also taught the philosophy: balance, patience, using your opponent's energy against them, finding stillness in motion. Linda attended sometimes, sitting on a bench with a book watching him teach. They still lived in the same house, still shared meals and conversations. The guest bedroom door was open more often now. Some nights, Linda would fall asleep on the couch watching television, and Marcus would carry her upstairs to their bed, and she wouldn't protest. Small steps. Tentative progress. On a Thursday evening in early March, after his class had ended and the students had dispersed, Marcus found Linda waiting for him by the fountain where he used to feed the pigeons. She had something in her hands, a photograph in a silver frame. "I found this today," she said, showing him the picture. It was from their wedding 15 years ago. Marcus in a simple suit, Linda in an elegant cream dress, both of them smiling at the camera with the kind of joy that seemed almost naive now. "I'd forgotten how happy we looked." "We were happy," Marcus said. "I was happy. I know you might not believe that given everything that's happened, but it's true." Linda studied the photograph. "I believe you. I think that's what makes this so hard. If you'd been miserable, if our marriage had been a complete lie, it would be easier to just walk away. But it wasn't a lie. Most of it was real. It's just that there was this huge part of you that wasn't there, that I never got to know." "And now?" Marcus asked carefully. "Now that you know all of it?" Linda set the frame down on the edge of the fountain. "Now I'm trying to decide if the man I didn't know is someone I can love as much as the man I thought I knew." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Victor. "Need to talk. Important. Can you meet me at the usual place?" The usual place was a small cafe near Powell's Books, a spot where they'd been meeting regularly to discuss the ongoing legal proceedings and to simply talk, two old friends reconnecting after years of separation. Marcus showed Linda the text. "Victor needs to see me. Do you want to come?" Linda considered this, then nodded. Yes, I think I would. They found Victor at a corner table, 2 cups of coffee already ordered. He stood when they arrived, greeting Linda with a warmth that had developed over the past months. Linda had been instrumental in helping Victor navigate his reunion with his daughter, offering advice from the perspective of someone who understood complicated family dynamics. "Thank you both for coming," Victor said once they were seated. "I have news and I wanted to share it with you first." "What kind of news?" Marcus asked. Victor pulled out an envelope, official-looking with government seals. "The Presidential Medal of Freedom. They're giving it to both of us for exposing the corruption and preventing what they're calling one of the greatest threats to democratic institutions in modern history. There's going to be a ceremony at the White House next month." Marcus stared at the envelope. "I don't want a medal." "Neither do I," Victor agreed. "But Natasha thinks I should accept it. She says it's not about us, it's about making sure what happened to Irina, to all the victims of this conspiracy, isn't forgotten. She says we owe it to them to stand up there and make sure the world remembers." "She's right," Linda said quietly. Both men turned to look at her. "Your wife died because people in power decided her life was expendable. Catherine lost her father. Marcus lost 15 years of living honestly. You lost your daughter's childhood. A medal doesn't fix any of that. But accepting it publicly, standing there and being recognized, it sends a message that the government is acknowledging what was done was wrong. That matters." Victor smiled. "She's smarter than both of us combined, Marcus. You're a lucky man." "I know," Marcus said, looking at Linda. "There's one more thing," Victor said. "I've been offered a position. Consultant for the FBI, training new agents on espionage tactics and threat assessment. It's based in Quantico, which means I'd have to relocate, leave Portland." Marcus felt a surprising pang at this news. Over the past 6 months, having Victor around had been grounding in a way he hadn't expected. Someone who understood, who knew the whole truth, who didn't judge him for what he'd been. "That's a good opportunity," Marcus said. "You should take it." "I'm going to," Victor replied. "But before I go, I wanted to say thank you for believing me when I came back, for risking everything to help expose the truth. You could have walked away, protected your life here, let me fight this battle alone. But you didn't." "Partners," Marcus said simply. "That's what we were. That's what we still are." Victor reached across the table and gripped Marcus's hand firmly. "Partners. Always." They spent the next hour talking, reminiscing about missions they'd worked together decades ago, laughing at stories that probably shouldn't have been funny but were, the dark humor that sustained people in impossible situations. Linda listened, asking questions, beginning to understand the world Marcus had inhabited for so long. When they finally left the cafe, the sun was setting, painting the Portland sky in shades of orange and pink. Victor hugged them both, promised to stay in touch, and headed off toward his temporary apartment. Marcus and Linda walked slowly back to their car, hands almost but not quite touching. "He's a good man," Linda said. "What happened to him and his family, it's unforgivable." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "And what you did, helping him expose it all, risking our safety to make sure the truth came out, that was brave, that was the right thing to do." Marcus stopped walking, turning to face her. "But—" "No buts," Linda said, and there were tears in her eyes. "Marcus, I've spent 6 months being angry at you for lying to me. 6 months feeling betrayed and hurt, and wondering if I ever really knew you. But watching you these past months, seeing you teach those classes, seeing you with Victor and Catherine, seeing the way you've been so patient with me while I figured things out, I realized something. You weren't pretending to be a good person for 15 years. You are a good person who happened to have done some terrible things in service of something you believed in." "Linda." "Let me finish," she said, wiping her eyes. "I'm not saying I'm over it, I'm not saying everything is fine, but I'm saying I want to try. Really try. Not just exist in the same house and be polite to each other, but actually rebuild what we had. Build something new, something better, based on complete honesty." Marcus felt something break open in his chest, a dam of emotion he'd been holding back for months. "I want that too, more than anything." "Then come home," Linda said, taking his hand. Really, come home, move back into our bedroom, stop treating me like I might break. I'm stronger than you think. I'm strong enough for this. They kissed there on the Portland street, cars passing by, people walking their dogs, the world continuing around them. It wasn't the passionate kiss of their wedding day, or the easy affection of their early years together. It was something harder earned and more precious, the kiss of two people who had seen each other as worst truths and chosen to stay anyway. That night, Marcus moved his things back into their bedroom. They stayed up late talking, really talking, about Berlin and the missions before that, about the things he'd seen and done, about the nightmares he sometimes had, and the guilt he carried. Linda listened to all of it, asked questions, held him when the memories became too heavy. I killed 43 people in my career, Marcus told her as they lay in the darkness. I remember every one of them, their faces, the circumstances. I told myself it was necessary, that I was protecting innocent people, preventing worse violence. And maybe that was true, but it doesn't change what I am. What you were, Linda corrected gently. You're not that person anymore, Marcus. You're the man who runs into burning buildings to save people, who teaches Tai Chi to teenagers, who makes dumplings for block parties. That's who you are now. Can those two people exist in the same body? Marcus asked. The killer and the teacher? They have to, Linda said, because you're both, and I'm choosing to love both. The months that followed were not easy. There were still arguments, still moments when Linda would see something on the news about the CIA or international operations and grow quiet, distant. There were nights when Marcus's nightmares woke them both, and he'd have to explain the fragments of memory, the faces of the dead that haunted his sleep. But there were also good moments. They took a trip to the coast, just the two of them, walking on the beach and talking about the future. They renewed their wedding vows in a small ceremony, attended only by close friends. Victor flew in from Virginia with Natasha. Catherine came with her new boyfriend. Sarah Reeves surprised them by showing up with flowers. Marcus's Tai Chi classes grew. He started teaching self-defense workshops specifically for women, combining the gentle movements of Tai Chi with practical defensive techniques. Linda helped him organize, handling the administrative side, even learning some of the forms herself. 1 year after the truth had come out, on a morning that felt like every other morning but wasn't, Marcus stood in Laurelhurst Park doing his forms. The sun was rising, the air was crisp, and he moved through cloud hands into single whip with the precision of decades of practice. But this time he wasn't thinking about Berlin. He wasn't cataloging exits or assessing threats or maintaining the hypervigilance that had defined most of his life. He was simply present, in the moment, feeling the movement of his body, the cool air on his skin, the peace that came from having nothing left to hide. Linda was waiting for him when he finished, 2 cups of coffee from their favorite cafe. They sat on a bench together, watching the park wake up, joggers, dog walkers, other early risers beginning their days. I have something to tell you, Linda said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. What's that? I've been talking to Catherine. She wants to write a book about everything that happened. Her father's story, Berlin, the conspiracy. She asked if we'd be willing to participate, to be interviewed. Marcus considered this. A year ago, the thought of going public with any of this would have been unthinkable. But now he understood what Victor's daughter had said about acknowledgement mattering. What do you think? He asked Linda. I think it's your story to tell, she said. But I also think there might be other people out there like you. Operatives who've done things they're ashamed of, who are trying to build normal lives, who feel like they can never be honest about who they were. Maybe hearing your story would help them. Maybe it would help them understand they can be both things, the person they were and the person they're becoming. Marcus thought about this, about all the years he'd spent hiding, about the weight of secrets and the freedom that had come from finally letting them go. Okay, he said. Tell Catherine yes. We'll do the interviews. So you're sure? I'm sure, no more secrets. Remember, that's what we promised each other. Linda leaned her head on his shoulder. No more secrets. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere in Virginia, Victor was probably having breakfast with Natasha, building the relationship they'd lost 12 years to recover. Somewhere in Portland, Catherine was working at the library, finally safe, finally free to use her real name. Somewhere in Washington, officials who had abused their power were facing justice. The world wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. There was still corruption, still violence, still people willing to sacrifice others for power and money. But in this small corner of Portland, on this particular morning, there was also redemption. There was also hope. Marcus Chen had spent 33 years as a weapon, 15 years as a lie, and now he was finally learning to be simply himself. Complicated, flawed, but honest. The Tai Chi movements he practiced every morning weren't a disguise for deadly techniques anymore. They were just movements. Beautiful, meditative, peaceful. He had been a killer. He had been a spy. He had been a liar and a husband and a ghost. Now he was just Marcus, and for the first time in 50 years that was enough. "What are you thinking about?" Linda asked, squeezing his hand. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am," Marcus said, "that you gave me a second chance, that I get to be here with you in this moment, with nothing left to hide." "We're both lucky," Linda said. "We get to grow old together, really together this time. No more walls between us." "No more walls," Marcus agreed. They finished their coffee and walked home hand in hand as the city woke around them. The house that had been a carefully constructed facade for 15 years was now just a home. The life that had been built on secrets was now built on truth. It wasn't the life Marcus had planned when he first retired. It was better, harder, more complicated, more honest, but infinitely better. That evening, Marcus taught his Tai Chi class as usual. 35 people showed up, ranging from teenagers to octogenarians, all moving through the forms together under his guidance. After class, a young woman approached him nervously. "Mr. Chen, I just wanted to say thank you. I read about what you did exposing that corruption, and I read about how you started these classes. My grandfather was in Vietnam, and when he came home, he never talked about it. He just got quiet and distant, and eventually it broke my family apart. I think if he'd had something like this, some way to process what he'd experienced, maybe things would have been different." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Tell your grandfather, if he's still with us, that it's never too late to start processing. And if he's not, then you honor his memory by not making the same mistakes. We all carry pain. The question is whether we let it define us or transform us." The young woman thanked him and left. Marcus packed up his things, waved goodbye to the last few students, and headed home. Linda had made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, but they ate together at the kitchen table, talking about their days, laughing at a story Linda shared about a patron at the library who'd tried to check out every book ever written about conspiracy theories. "Apparently," Linda said, grinning, "the truth is out there, and it's hidden in the microfiche." Marcus laughed, really laughed, and realized how rare that had been in his old life. Joy had always felt like a luxury he couldn't afford, an emotion that made you vulnerable. Now it felt essential, necessary, the whole point of surviving. After dinner, they sat on the front porch in their wicker chairs, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. Tom and Elaine Robertson walked by with their dog and stopped to chat. Mrs. Patterson called from across the street, asking if Marcus could help her move some boxes this weekend. The ice cream truck rolled through, playing its cheerful tune, children running after it with dollar bills clutched in their hands. Normal, mundane, beautiful. "Do you ever miss it?" Linda asked quietly when they were alone again. "The excitement, the danger, being in the field." Marcus thought about this honestly. "Sometimes I miss the clarity. In the field you always knew what the mission was, what success looked like. Real life is messier. The victories are smaller, the rules are less clear. But I wouldn't trade this for anything. This is real. Those missions, that life, it was real too, but it wasn't mine. This is mine. You're mine. This peace we've found, that's worth more than any successful operation I ever ran." Linda reached over and took his hand. "I'm glad you feel that way, because I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me, Marcus Chen. All of you. The spy, the teacher, the man who burns toast and leaves his socks on the floor and still doesn't understand how the DVR works." "I understand the DVR perfectly well," Marcus protested. You recorded 6 hours of the shopping network last week. That was a strategic decision. They laughed together, and the sound carried out into the evening air, mixing with all the other sounds of their neighborhood, their life, their world. The story could end here, with Marcus and Linda on their porch, hands intertwined, having survived betrayal and secrets and violence to find something real on the other side. And in many ways, that is the ending. But stories don't really end, they just pause, waiting for the next chapter to begin. Somewhere in the world, there are other operatives carrying secrets, living double lives, wondering if they'll ever be able to be honest about who they are. Somewhere, there are families fractured by lies told in the name of national security. Somewhere, there are conspiracies still hidden, injustices still covered up, people still suffering because someone decided their lives were expendable. Marcus can't save them all. He can't expose every corruption or heal every wound. But he can tell his story. He can teach his classes. He can show up day after day and be honest about who he is, all of who he is. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Show up, be honest. Try to do more good than harm. Love the people we love with everything we have, and hope that when we reach the end we can look back and say we lived as fully and truthfully as we knew how. Marcus Chen is 68 years old now. He still does Tai Chi every morning in Laurelhurst Park. He still makes dumplings for block parties. He still wakes sometimes from nightmares of Berlin and other cities, other missions, other lives taken. But he also wakes to Linda beside him, to sunlight streaming through windows, to a life lived in the open with nothing left to hide. And every morning when he moves through those Tai Chi forms, cloud hands, single whip, white crane spreads wings, he's not rehearsing how to kill anymore. He's practicing how to live. That's the real secret, the one he never learned in all his years at the agency. The hardest fight isn't against external enemies. It's against the parts of yourself that want to hide, to lie, to keep everyone at a distance where they can't hurt you. The hardest fight is choosing vulnerability over safety, truth over comfortable lies, connection over solitude. Marcus Chen won that fight, not because he was stronger or smarter than anyone else, but because he had Linda, who refused to let him hide, and Victor, who showed him it was never too late to seek justice, and Catherine, who taught him that forgiveness was possible even for the unforgivable. Every morning in that park, Marcus teaches Tai Chi to anyone who wants to learn. And he tells them the same thing every time. These movements can defend you if necessary, but more importantly, they can center you, ground you, remind you that strength and gentleness aren't opposites. They're partners, just like the person you were and the person you're becoming. Some students understand immediately, others take time, but they all keep coming back week after week, learning the forms, finding their own balance. And Marcus? Marcus finally understands what he was really searching for all those years ago when he chose to retire, to disappear into suburban normalcy. He wasn't looking for safety or anonymity or escape. He was looking for permission to be fully human, to be complicated and contradictory and still worthy of love. He found it, not in the hiding but in the revelation, not in the lie but in the truth. That's the real ending, not a dramatic showdown or a shocking twist, but something quieter and more profound. A man learning to live with himself, a marriage rebuilt on honesty, a community of students and friends who know the whole truth and accept it. Marcus Chen was a weapon. He was a spy. He was a ghost. Now he's just a man doing Tai Chi in a park hand in hand with the woman he loves, teaching anyone who wants to learn that the most powerful thing we can do is be honest about who we are, all of who we are. That's not just the end of Marcus's story, it's the beginning of the next chapter. What an incredible journey we've shared together, from the quiet park in Portland to the shadows of international conspiracy, from the lies that almost destroyed everything to the truth that set Marcus free. If this story moved you, if it made you think about secrets and second chances, and the courage it takes to be honest, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Tell us your name, what city and state you're watching from, and what part of this story touched you the most. And remember, this is just one story among many. We have more incredible tales coming your way. Stories of redemption, love, betrayal, and the extraordinary strength of ordinary people facing impossible choices. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you never miss what's next. Hit that notification bell. Give us a thumbs up if this story meant something to you. Thank you for staying with Marcus and Linda through every twist and turn. Thank you for being part of this community. And most of all, thank you for believing that even the darkest pasts can lead to beautiful futures. Until next time, remember, we all carry secrets, but we don't have to carry them alone. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell the truth and see who stays. We'll see you in the next story.